Good evening, everyone. Let's make a start. My name's Patrick Hall. I'm the Mayor of the City of Canning. I welcome you here to the City. It's an administration building. It is now just after 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 16th of May, and I announce the opening of our ordinary council meeting for the month. In relation to the meeting, we acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and we also pay our respects to elders both past and present. Can I ask everybody here this evening, including councillors, to please turn off and put away your mobile telephones, please. If you have a mobile telephone, please turn it off and put it away. This meeting is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Council meetings are public meetings, and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament, and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the City unless it is adopted by a resolution of this council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the City publishes a full recording of the meeting. Recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the City's express permission. At item 2, attendance, I'm pleased to say the full council is here this evening. Thank you, councillors. Good evening. Approved leave of absence. At item 2.2, there is none. Disclosures of interest at item 3. CEO, can I ask you to run through our declarations?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to item 3.1, I have received no declarations of a financial interest. In relation to item 3.2, declarations of impartiality interest, I have received 2. The first from Deputy Mayor Ben Kunza in relation to CD 00623, which is the adjourned motion stage 2 of Jandakot Eastern Link Road, progress to detailed design phase. The nature of Deputy Mayor's interest is I have long been a volunteer at a conservation centre that was established with the sole aim to help Western Australia's endangered black cockatoo populations. Given the proposed Jandakot Eastern Link Road has been found to pose significant risk to local black cockatoo populations, there may be a perception that my volunteer role may adversely affect my impartiality. The second declaration of impartiality interest was received from Councillor Steve Parkinson, again in relation to item CD 00623. The nature of Councillor Parkinson's interest is I am Council's delegate on the Jandakot Airport Community Aviation Group. Thank you, CEO.
Mr Mayor, can I add one?
What would you like to, why are you interrupting the meeting?
CD 00723. I'm a resident of East Cannington, and it's...
Is it in the affected area?
Yes, it's in proximity, so I just wanted to say...
I'll ask you to fill out a...
Thank you.
Please, thank you. So that's an impartiality. Impartiality, thank you. So Councillor Jesse Jacobs is declaring a impartiality for an item that will be raised soon in relation to a scheme amendment and the rezoning for a portion of Queen's Park, and he is stating that he is a resident of Queen's Park and lives within the affected area. East Cannington. East Cannington. Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Question times for the public. Sorry, at item 5, reports of delegates without discussion. Does any elected member wish to table a delegate report? Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, question time for the public. At item 6, responses to previous questions taken on notice. Responses to questions taken on notice at the ordinary council meeting on the 18th of April can be seen in tonight's agenda. Questions from the public. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, please come forward when I call your name, state your name and address for the purpose of the recording and for the meeting, and then proceed to ask your question. If a question cannot be answered at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided in writing for the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. The City's received a number of written questions this evening. The first from Sean Mawson. Sean, can I ask you to please come forward?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My name's Sian Mawson, 86 Gibbs Street, East Cannington. What care does the City currently give the natural areas of Bush Forever Site 388?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Bush Forever site is maintained by the City's Natural Areas team on a scheduled attendance of approximately 6 visits per annum. Works include fire break maintenance, fence repair, weed control and litter removal as the main tasks. Further to the scheduled maintenance, crews visit the site on demand following requests from customers, typically to repair fences and address illegal dumping and complete the required feral animal trapping.
Thank you. Your second question?
How would the care given change if the Jandakot Eastern Link Road didn't go ahead?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If the current foreshadowed motion, which is before Council tonight, is supported, then there will likely be requirements for increased resourcing to meet the preservation, restoration and revegetation requirements as prescribed in the foreshadowed motion. If the Jandakot Eastern Link Road didn't go ahead, irrespective of the foreshadowed motion, the City would be required to increase the scope and level of service for fire break maintenance, fence repair, weed control and litter removal to the Bush Forever site.
Thank you. And your third question?
No, thank you.
You're done? Thank you very much. Can I just say too, I appreciate those questions being provided prior to the meeting with due warning, because it allows us to provide you with a full response. So I very much appreciate that. Mr Radenstock, Murray, you're here somewhere. I saw you at the back. Murray, would you like to come forward and just state your name and address, please, and ask your questions?
Do I need? No, okay, that's good. Murray Radenstock's my name, at Riverton Drive, Shelley.
Thank you.
This is in relation to the JEL project, CD 00623, attachment 3. Question 1. Page 14 of the assessment report states that the JEL project intersects 2.72 hectares of Bush Forever Site 388. This site and others were declared to a great bipartisan fanfare by the Ministry for Planning in 2000, the year 2000. I now quote from page 68 of the assessment report that states, Black Cockatoo referral guidelines indicate that clearing of more than 1 hectare of quality foraging habitat is regarded as high risk of having a significant impact on the species. Clearing for JEL project will result in the loss of 2.3 hectares of foraging habitat for black cockatoos and some 4 hectares of quenda habitat. My question is, can the City please provide what their understanding of what Bush Forever means?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The City's understanding of what Bush Forever means aligns with the West Australian Government policy, the Bush Forever policy. The policy recognises the protection and management of significant bushland areas as a fundamental consideration in the planning process, while also seeking to mitigate and balance wider environmental, social and economic considerations. In general terms, the policy does not prevent development where it is consistent with the measures and other planning and environmental considerations.
Your second question, Murray?
Second question. Page 72, the City of Canning and the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage will provide an offset to compensate the loss of fauna habitat. What consideration or discussion, if any, has the City had with the Department of Planning towards locating a comparable offset fauna habitat on the Swan Coastal Plain?
Thank you. Director Graham Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Department of Planning identified land at Harrisdale Swamp, which is an old sand quarry that was purchased by the state government within close proximity to the site for revegetation, and that is currently being carried out by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. The balance of the offsets involve the closure of Govan and Lothian roads, and also this portion of the Bush Forever Site 388, which is degraded, forms part of the whole offset package.
Did you have another question, Murray?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming along. We have 4 deputations which will take a considerable amount of time to get through. Has anybody else got a question before I close public question time and move on to that item? Thank you, everyone. I'll close public question time now, and the time is 10 minutes past 8. Thank you very much to those who asked a question. We move on to item 7, first of all, which is the confirmation of minutes. These are the confirmation of minutes for the ordinary council meeting held on the 18th of April. Councillors, the recommendation is on page 3 of the agenda. The recommendation is also on screen. Can I have a mover for that item, please? Thank you, Councillor Bain. A seconder for that item? Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Let's put that matter to the vote.
The motion to confirm the April OCM minutes has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move to item 8 on tonight's agenda, receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1, petitions, there are none. 8.2, presentations, there are none. Deputations, we have a number of deputations, the first of which is by Ms Colma Keating. Evening, Colma. Thank you for coming along. That's regarding report CD 006 of 23. That's the adjourned motion, stage 2 of the Jandakot Eastern Link Road, progress to detailed design phase. You have up to 10 minutes. Thank you. Would you like to just introduce yourself to the meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Thank you, Council, for creating a space for deputations. Colma Keating, been residing at 187B Riverton Drive, Shelley, for 32 years. Active Canning community member. In fact, I can again thank you for acknowledging 20 years or more of environmental voluntary service to our community in 2013 by inducting me onto the inaugural City of Canning Environmental Honour Board, along with others in the gallery, Sian Mawson, Grecian Sandwell, Diane Matthews and Sandy Wainwright. I'm also a botanist and a geographer by training and career, including working in the 1990s on Bush Plan that was eventually launched as Bush Forever. My deputation is on 1, representation, 2, consultation, 3, Bush Forever, 4, children's children and young ones, 5, environmental services and climate change. Apologies, no slides, but just imagine wandering through your personal patches of neighbourhood nature with a young kid tugging you by the hand to show you another weird and wonderful bit of nature, this time closer to the ground. 1, representation. Thank you to the City for being leaders in recordings of council meetings publicly available. I say leaders as I am pleased to see that government rules have now made it mandatory, particularly for metropolitan LGAs and regionally based city LGAs, so you have shown leadership in this area. Having listened to the recording from the 18th of April, my 3 comments include 1, being grateful that I do not have to be a bum on a seat in the gallery to demonstrate concern about an issue, but will be represented by elected representatives. 2, being grateful to Deputy Mayor Kunza and Councillor Spencer-Teo for their due diligence in raising environmental concerns. 3, being grateful that each of our elected members don't just represent their ward, but they represent the entire City of Canning. 2, consultation. If we really do want community input, we need to be even better at actively encouraging it and explaining it. Casting your minds back before you all became active, that is leading up to your community service as Mayor, Deputy Mayor and or Councillor, how often did you check the daily updates on consultation hubs? Excuse the acronyms, just quicker tonight, of State, e.g. EPA, DWER, DPLH, WAPC, DEMERS, Department of Local Government. Federal, e.g. D2 relating to the EPBC Act, and local, e.g. Walga, Canning, or if you lived outside of Canning, your local council. Fabulous community conservation organisations such as local Friends of groups or urban land care groups, the Urban Bushland Council, the Wildflower Society, BirdLife WA, Conservation Council, WA Nats, to name a few, try to keep up, all with volunteer effort. These consultation opportunities are not on the horizon for most people. They need to be alerted or invited or reminded. I currently convene a submission working group, and it is overwhelming what we are constantly asked to comment on and recommend on, particularly when science-based decisions have already been agreed to, e.g. threatened ecological communities such as the Banksia Woodlands on discussion tonight. Listed under the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, each have the approved conservation advices which state that under the priority protection and restoration actions, the 3 key approaches to achieve the conservation objectives are protect the ecological community to prevent further loss of extent and condition, restore the ecological community within its original range by active abatement of threats, by revegetation and by other conservation initiatives, communicate with and support researchers, land use planners, landholders, land managers, community members, including the Indigenous community and others, to increase understanding of the value and function of the ecological community and encourage their effort in its protection and recovery. Actions inconsistent with these recommendations that are likely to significantly affect the ecological community should not be undertaken. Then we look at the state's contemporary native vegetation policy just brought out last year. Commits the state government to a net gain in native vegetation through conservation and restoration of natural areas. Currently, this is not happening and WA is suffering a net loss of native vegetation. And then there's a coalition of Australian governments about Australia's native vegetation framework in 2012. As you can imagine, it's very similar stuff. Increase the national extent and connectivity of native vegetation, maintain and improve condition. And let's not forget what was decided about endangered black cockatoos and how to reverse their decline. 3, Bush Forever, a bipartisan government policy and program that was endorsed and launched in 2000, as you're well aware. The forward by Graham Kerrith, MLA for Riverton, that is our backyard, and Minister for Planning says it all. We are pleased to present and endorse Bush Forever to the people of Western Australia as a policy position on the government to guide future decision making and to protect and manage Bush Forever sites through the implementation mechanisms identified in this document. Bush Forever fulfils the government's commitment to prepare a strategic plan for the conservation of bushland on the Swan Coastal Plain portion of the Perth metropolitan region, as identified in the Urban Bushland Strategy 1995. It also substantially meets the government's commitments to the 1996 National Strategy for the Conservation of Australia's Biodiversity, signed by the heads of government, in that it seeks to establish a representative system of protected areas. Bush Forever is an implementation plan and a whole-of-government initiative designed to identify, protect and manage regionally significant bushland in order to achieve a sustainable balance between conservation of our bushland and development in metropolitan Perth. Others like Sian Mawson and Dr Wayong last week have again reminded us of what we have lost and what cannot replace, and that we cannot replace like for like. 4, children's children and young ones. Whilst I don't have any biological children, I have many in my life, some related, others not, others whom I just have general worldly concern for. Recently, I have been gaining guidance from young ones, aka 12 to 35-year-olds, on how can we best support them as they care for our natural world. My first learning was, we have grown up knowing the world is a terrible space. We don't need to be told. We are living it and it is overwhelming us. My other learning is that we have to keep remembering who will be around in 10, 20, 70, 130 years or more, and what our actions are doing for their world. Equally, we can just cast our minds back even only 23 years and look at how much we have chipped and sliced off bush forever. Don't let this be the status quo for the future. Environmental services and climate change, number 5. A reminder to remember what critical environmental services our local and regional neighbourhood nature is providing for us all and those in the future. And we all know that isolated patches won't survive, that ecological linkages are critical too, and what the impacts of climate change are, we are well aware. These are reflected in the city's policies and plans. I ask that each time you consider slicing off a bit more of the meagre areas of natural bushland that are left, think of the analogy with the asbestos and mesothelioma. The companies knew but didn't do the right thing quickly enough, and there have been and still are critical consequences. And those not in the know were aghast when they found out the truth that those in the know didn't act with the workers and the community in mind. We do know about the significance of our environment. We do know about the fragility of our environment. We do know what the impacts will be of clearing, degrading and/or disturbing our natural ecosystems. We do know about the rippling effects. We do know that, try as we may, we can't replicate the intricacies and interconnectedness of these ecosystems. We do know about the endorsed legal instruments, policies and standards that we have a responsibility to deliver on, including those of the city. We do know what we need to do. If you forget, ask a young one.
a button. And thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for your deputation. I'll call forward Stephen Johnson. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much. Nice to see you tonight, Steve. Can I ask you please to just introduce yourself for the purpose of the recording, and please go ahead. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Stephen Johnston, 13 Delphi Court in Rossmoyne. I have significant concerns about the environmental impacts of the proposed Jandakot East Link Road. I commend Councillors Kunz and Spencer Teo for raising their concerns at the April meeting. They were not only expressing their personal views, but they were also reflecting the Canning community's general concern for the protection and enhancement of the natural environment that is clearly set out in the city's strategic community plans. I was away on holiday for the last OCM meeting, but hearing the recording, my concern rose immediately when I think I heard just two words: "It's only." I've been hearing those words preceding the downplaying and denigration of environmental concerns about land clearing proposals for more than 50 years. It's only a bit of scrub. It's only a degraded wetland. Remember that one at Bibra Lake. It's only a very small area. It's only next to a rubbish tip. But the combination of all those it's onlys and large-scale clearing for agriculture have resulted in the inexorable loss of vast areas of natural vegetation and habitat across Australia, in Perth and in the city of Canning. I read only a couple of days ago that largely because of land clearing, Australia has experienced the greatest biodiversity decline of any country in the past 200 years. I think the first "it's only," or a version of it, that I heard from the OCM was that only 0.6 of a hectare of bushland will be affected. Now, even from a glance at the map of the options for the routes of that road, that just didn't sound quite right, but I didn't know, so I checked the figure in the council brief. But that was of no help because it just dismissed the environmental impact as minor clearing for native vegetation and earthworks. So I found the complete summary figure in the city's site assessment and on page 66 of the Aurora Environmental Assessment, which of course was commissioned by the city. And Aurora consultants say, quote, "The construction of the JEL project will result in the permanent loss of 4.3 hectares of native vegetation, with 3.98 hectares in a degraded condition or better, including 2.38 hectares of Banksia woodlands." And that's one of the sites that I stuck my phone through the cyclone fence on the road leading into the bush. You can see a degraded area next to the fence and then the bushland. That's as close as I could approximate to the where the road would go. And if it allows me to click on, which it does, that is another shot of that site, of the mature Banksia woodland. The Aurora report tells us that the project will directly impact 2.72 hectares of the Bush Forever Site 388, including 1.61 hectares of vegetation that is in good to very good to degraded condition. Okay, that is, yes, a minor impact, but it is still significant. It is, for example, 9.2% of the Bush Forever Site's 17.4 hectares of vegetation that is in the city of Canning. And in relation to the Banksia woodland, page 92 of the Aurora report says, and I quote, "The loss of up to 2.38 hectares may constitute a significant impact on the basis that the JEL project will contribute to a direct reduction in the area of ecological community and potentially indirectly adjacent areas." The report also comments succinctly that clearing of the 2.38 hectares contradicts the very first principle of recovery for this threatened ecological community, which is to protect the existing remnants. My other major concerns about the environmental impact of the JEL are the reliance on offsets to ameliorate the impacts. An environmental offset has been defined as an off-site action or actions to address significant residual environmental impacts of a development or activity. Now, that's a reasonable principle. But in too many cases over the last 20 years that offsets have been in place in Australia, environmental offsets have been misused or inadequately managed. The first proposed offset for the Jandakot East Link Road seems a reassuring exception. reclassification of bush forever to bush forever of the relatively high standard vegetation in the Lothian and Gavan Road reserves. There's just one potential problem with this, which was more broadly brought out to the attention of a Commonwealth Parliamentary inquiry into environmental offsets in 2014, and that's security of tenure. Just as the 2.72 hectares of Bush Forever site is now proposed to be reclassified as a road reservation, so could similar economic pressures see the proposed 2.1 hectare addition to the site be reclassified back to road reservation by another amendment of the Metropolitan Roads Region scheme. The second issue with the JEL offsets is that the potential benefits from the revegetation of degraded and completely degraded land at Ranford Road and the southern end of Harrisdale Swamp, and that's the corner of the Ranford Road and Livingston Road, the benefits are speculative and will not be achievable until way into the future. And probably if they are achieved, it unfortunately will be beyond my lifetime. For the bulldozers to totally destroy the bushland to make way for the Jandakot East Link Road will take a matter of hours, maybe days, maybe a day or two. But it will take years, many, many years, and a lot of work to restore the degraded and completely degraded sites to anything resembling Banksia woodland, recognising that we can never fully replicate it. It is instructive that the accepted definition of degraded vegetation devised by eminent Western Australian botanist Greg Keary and used in the Aurora report states that it cannot be regenerated to even approaching good condition without intensive management, open quote, close quote. Obviously then, if the vegetation is completely degraded, the task will be even greater. It's not surprising then that analysis by the state government's Department of Water and Environmental Regulation in 2019 of 105 offsets in Western Australia found that they had, quote, not fully counterbalanced the significant residual impacts of clearing approvals. And a separate University of Western Australia School of Botany study in 2016 of 208 WA offsets found that around 30% were ineffective through non or inadequate implementation. And what I saw recently at the Harrisdale Swamp revegetation site that Mr Bowes referred to tonight did not inspire much confidence for me. The Aurora report tells us that restoration by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, or DBCA as we know it, commenced in April 2018 with top dressing with topsoil bought from Jandakot Airport following clearing of native vegetation, planting and direct seeding using a mix of endemic species to supplement the natural seed in the topsoil. That was 5 years ago. And this was how it looked just 2 weeks ago when I walked over it, a weedy paddock. In fact, the weeds were even thicker at various points. I saw no evidence of emerging Banksia woodland at all. The trees in the background, I think, are predominantly Acacia longifolia, which is one of the main weed pests for Harrisdale Swamp Reserve. It is no disrespect to DBCA or to the staff who work there, some of whom I know well, but as my colleagues here from the Canning River Regional Park volunteers would probably attest, it is extremely doubtful whether DBCA or the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, if they were to take it on, or indeed the Natural Areas team of the City of Canning, have the resources to bring a long-term challenging project like this to successful fruition without a major additional injection of resources. This, after all, is a former sand quarry that then became a tip and has only then had a layer of topsoil brought in. We all know how long Centenary Park that project has taken. And that is not to be returned to Banksia woodland, that was simply to cap it. So in summary, Mr Mayor, I believe very simply the impacts on the Canning natural environment of the proposed Jandakot East Link Road are significant, long-term, and may not be adequately offset by the land swap and the revegetation projects that are directly connected to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming along tonight. Appreciate it. Next speaker, I've got Doctor. Doctor, you were here last week? I was. You're doing another deputation? I am. You've been out counting kangaroos? I have you? Good. All right. Glad to hear it. Can I just ask you to introduce yourself, please, to the meeting and then commence?
I'm the convener of the Friends of Kenhurst Park. I'm
you.
the Australian Native Plant Society of Australia National Conservation Officer, past president of the Wildflower Society, Murdoch Branch and State. So I have a long experience in environmental protection measures, and I know Kenhurst Park and Jandakot Airport very well. So my presentation will focus on a lot of the aspects of this Jandakot Eastern Link Road on those areas now. So that's our logo. That's the grand spider orchid, a threatened species which grows in Kenhurst Park and also in Jandakot Airport. But a lot of that was removed in Jandakot Airport's clearing of the site over the last 15 years. Now, why is this not going ahead? Am I doing something wrong? Can somebody move that for me, please? So this map shows the current Jandakot Airport Holdings proposal for their road network and how it connects with the road from Ranford Road to the corner of the Canning landfill. And as you can see, that assumes that there will be a road, a sealed road along Johnson Road, which will connect with a road from Jandakot's Orion Road, where there's a little red circle, going from west to east to a roundabout on Johnson Road. That is currently in their master plan, but it is not yet currently approved under the EPBC Act because it is different to the one that was proposed 10 years ago. I'm still trying to get this projector to work. Next slide. This is the proposed Jandakot Eastern Link Road through the City of Canning's landfill as it goes through part of Bush Forever Site 388. As already mentioned by two of the previous speakers, it's a very significant site. I won't go into it in great detail, other than to say that that site is already highly fragmented, and building that road will fragment it even more. It is quite significant for Carnaby's cockatoos, for Banksia woodland, for honey possums. If a 4-lane road is constructed rather than a 2-lane road, which might be an initial phase, that impact will be even greater. And there's also a proposal for a shared use path that will create even further clearing. This or a similar road was not wanted by the community at a public meeting run by the City of Canning in 2009 that I was present at and asked questions of. The only people who wanted that road were 3 representatives from Jandakot Airport Holdings. Next slide if I can. I'm still having trouble with the slides. My apologies. So this slide shows the potential impacts of the whole of the Jandakot Eastern Link Road, not just the section within the Canning landfill. So there is other Banksia woodland that will also be cleared that is within the Jandakot Airport site. That white line that I show there is the route of that extension from Orion Road to join up with the Jandakot Eastern Link Road. The diagram on the right, which you probably can't see, but once you see it in your minutes and you get it printed out, you will see that there is Banksia woodland in there. There is also Melaleuca woodland in there and wetland. I've actually been asked by the City of by Jandakot Airport Holdings in September to come and help them count how many grand spider orchids there is in that site. That invitation came through Kingsley Dixon, whose name has previously been mentioned. There is a suspicion there's probably 250 grand spider orchids there, and it's the biggest population in the state. Very significant. Now, that will be a huge risk if this Jandakot Airport Road proposal goes through, because it's not just the City of Canning who will be building some of this road. Jandakot Airport will as well, and they'll be constructing that connecting road once and if they get approval from the Commonwealth. Next slide, if I may, please. There is no need for that Jandakot Eastern Link Road. It is not justified. The Canning Vale Sports Complex, to which it may connect, has been a pipe dream for the last 40 years. I've not seen much of it being built yet. The road is not really needed until it's ready to go. It's not needed because it's not realistic to upgrade the landfill at the present time. You might want to do that once you've had some realistic opportunities to develop the landfill. The only real benefit of that road, from Ranford Road anywhere, is to Jandakot Airport Holdings and the airport. The City of Canning does not benefit from this road, even in the short term, maybe in the long term. Jandakot Airport is only contributing a small amount to the cost of the road. The City of Canning and Main Roads is contributing most, yet they are getting all the benefit. Next slide, please. Again, there is no need for the road. It's planned simply to supply consumers to Jandakot Airport's commercial site. It will induce a lot of traffic. The documents that you've got already show what it is. That through traffic will inhibit access to the railway and the bus station, which has been built to service the community. If the road was for emergency access and egress, as Jandakot continually maintain, there is no need for a 4-lane divided road. It could easily be a very narrow road. It'll hardly ever be used. It would also be clogged by all that traffic that's now going to be induced to come there. So it will not be any different to trying to get out of Carroll Avenue or any of the other roads. It won't be used. It'll be a waste for that purpose. Any emergency access and egress should be from some internal Jandakot roads that are currently on site. There's one road, for example, if you look at the northeast corner that's marked in red, that it's near the end of the runway. That is not a used road, but it could easily be designated to an emergency if required. The traffic will be going one way. It won't be going two ways. And it could easily be opened and used solely for that purpose. Next slide, please. There's an alternative road if a road was to be built. It should be constructed, in my view, as a service road to the waste transfer station, to the landfill generally, and Kenners Park. And that's that black road that I've highlighted on the edge of the landfill. You'll note that it does not go through any Bush Forever sites at all. So in other words, it saves all that Bush Forever site that we're trying to protect. It should go west of that. It eliminates clearing, it eliminates fragmentation, and it entirely protects the Bush Forever site. It would better service the landfill through any commercial development, in my view. It is closer to the landfill. It's not obstructed by any transfer station or any bushland. So why wouldn't you build it closer to where the commercial operators would like it? The road should go to the southern end of the landfill, and in my hope, it would service access to Kenners Park, which at the present time is impossible and in fact non-existent. I think that might be the end of my slide. No. So if the road is built, if any road is built, but particularly the sealed road, these are my requests for how it to be built. It was in my submission to the WAPC 12 years ago, but it was totally ignored. It should be a single lane road. Yes, there should be an acquisition offset and a revegetation offset, but I concur with Steve Johnson that they're totally unacceptable. They do not work. I can say that because I own some offsets. I have revegetated 100 hectares of my own private property, and I can tell you that property has 650 species of native vegetation. I have 50 growing in my re-veg. My partners who are doing it in Gondwana Link are able to get maybe 150 species of their 1,000 species in that area. We are not yet capable of restoring our bushland. Don't clear it. We need to control access from that road if it's built to Leeming Road. Translocation and planting of micropropagated Caladinia huguli as part of Jandakot Airport's clearing, if they're found in that line, would need to happen. There needs to be translocation of the priority 4 species, Dodonea hacketiana, which is on Jandakot Airport site. I'm not sure whether it's on Bush Forever 388, but it might well be. That should be translocated. We should use any existing cleared areas for any additional infrastructure like water retention basins and other things. And we should try and use pervious pavement to make the road, because that means we won't have accumulated water and runoff problems. That's a project that I tried to install on Forest Highway when I was engaged by Main Roads as their community representative about 10 years ago. We almost got a trial going, but it hasn't happened. But here's a potential opportunity if, and only if, and it should not, only if a road is constructed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming along. We have a final deputation this evening, and that's in relation to a separate matter. And just let me find it just here. Miss Jenny Devonish, can I ask you to please step forward? And you're giving a deputation today in relation to report CD 008, and that's in relation to a scheme amendment for the Willetton Industrial Area, the commercial precinct there on High Road. How are you?
Well, thank you. Graham, my husband, is
Hi
going
Graham,
to
how are
read it
you?
out.
Just
Yeah.
relax, just introduce yourselves to the council and please go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor, CEO and councillors. Graham and Jenny Devenish, 27 Yampi Way in Willetton. We've been landowners, ratepayers, small business owners of a property in the area concerned for 41 years, and since our retirement a year ago, have been greatly impacted due to the rezoning from mixed business to light industrial. Our property, built in 1982 by my parents and myself, looks more like a house than a factory, and it was built as a dental laboratory clinic operating in the health field until July 2022, when Jenny and I decided to retire. We put our property on the market in March last year and had two definite buyers after 3 days on the market. They were both in the health industry, as we had been, but on approaching the Shire, were informed their uses were not compatible with a light industry zone use. In the past year, we've had several other interested buyers, 2 in vehicle sales, 3 in childcare, 1 in restaurants, 2 in offices. All of these buyers have been refused by the Shire due to the new rezoning. Hence, 1 year we were still unable to enjoy our retirement. Retiring for us means selling our commercial property. It's the only source of income we have. Being small business owners and paying staff supers, we were unable to build a super fund nest egg for ourselves and relied on the sale of our property. Not once did we ever consider our brick and tile property on its own green title would be subject to red tape, making it almost impossible to sell, making it worthless. The passing of these 4 additional land uses will give us and other landowners the opportunity to sell our properties in the area. As noted last week by the Mayor, it is a way of giving back some land uses to landowners. 3 of these uses, medical, consult and restaurant cafes, are already in the area. However, the 4th, use of car and caravan sales, is new. Also, as past residents living in the Willetton area for 27 years, spanning from 1973, until 2000, we see no reason why the introduction of car sales and caravans would cause any threat to residents. Everyday families look for cars and caravans to purchase. The Willetton Light Industrial Area is a small pocket of which is encased between Acanthus Road, Herald Avenue, Roxby Lane and Augusta Street. Unless a resident is seeking to look at cars, caravans to purchase, most traffic entering the area would come from High Road. The introduction of this category would also make it compatible with other trades such as mechanics, upholstery businesses. They're already in the area. We trust councillors will make an informed decision on voting for the introduction of the 4 new categories. Jenny and I thank you for your time. We appreciate being able to stand here and put forward our wishes. Thank you.
Well, I hope you get a round of applause for that one. Can I just say from the chair here, thank you for coming along. I know how hard it is sometimes to do that. You did a terrific job. Also to apologise for the distress you must have felt about about trying to dispose of your business. That has never been the intention. Council will be bringing that matter forward so we can actually have a discussion about that early in the meeting. So I encourage you to stay behind and listen to the debate on that, and we'll make a decision tonight, and we'll see how that goes. But again, apologies for the distress you must have felt. I understand it. Let's see if we can rectify it tonight. But again, thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you, and thank you, councillors. Thanks to those that provided deputations to the council tonight. We move to item 9 on the agenda, which is applications for leave of absence, and there are none. Item 10, questions by members of which due notice has been given without discussion. There have been none. Item 11 is items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery, and I'm going to bring 2 matters forward. It's not to get rid of you all early. It's not that, Murray, even though I can see you smiling up there. But because we've got a number of people here this evening in the gallery, and you've got better things to do than spend the entire evening with us, because we'll be here for a considerable period of time, I'm going to bring forward CD 006 of 23. That's the Jandakot Eastern Link matter. I'm going to bring that forward. That'll be amongst the first dealt with tonight, or it will be the first. The second I'll bring forward, as I've just promised to the Devonishers, will be CD 008 of 23, and that relates to scheme local planning scheme number 42, which covers that Willetton industrial area. So having said that, we will now move to item CD 0023. That's the adjourned motion. Stage 2, the title of the report is Stage 2 of Jandakot Eastern Link Road, progress to detailed design. The responsible officer is Director Graham Bride, on my right, far right, the Director of Planning and Development. And just to catch up with where we were, at the last meeting we had a motion in front of us. We had a recommendation by the City. Deputy Mayor Kunza put forward a foreshadowed motion. The recommendation of the City wasn't supported at the time. The foreshadowed motion has then come into effect. The council was partially through the debate on that matter, and a procedural motion was called by Councillor Hardeep Singh to adjourn the matter to tonight, where debate will continue. Councillors, what I'd like to do before we start considering the seriousness of this matter and the importance of it to this council is propose that in accordance with clause 14.1, suspend standing orders and suspend standing order clause 7.11, which relates to speaking twice on a matter. And what I would propose to do then would be to go back to the Deputy Mayor and also to Councillor Spencer Teo to open again if they would like, and then we will continue the debate on the matter. The reason why I'm proposing that is in the report that was tabled at the last meeting, there is a raft of new information put in there by the City in relation to implications that were not known to Council and certainly not known to the speakers who spoke on the matter at the last meeting, and that is all new information. So I think we've done it before. Councillor Bain put a motion to speak again and suspend standing orders last year, which was supported by Council. Councillor Spencer Teo, you've got a question?
I'd just like to clarify, I haven't spoken on this motion. It was the Deputy Mayor Kunza and Councillor Sabiri and yourself who have.
Terrific, thank you for that. Can I have a seconder, please, to suspend standing orders? Thank you, Councillor Jesse Jacobs. Councillor Sweeney?
So that I've got this right, just for clarity, so how many people have actually spoken? Because I can't remember from the last meeting. We only got 3 people that actually spoke.
3 people have spoken, including the Deputy Mayor, myself, and thank you, Councillor Spencer Teo. Councillor Sabiri has already spoken.
And you want to put forward this so those people have an opportunity to speak again, is that correct?
Well, I just think this is such an important conversation. This is a really big decision for this council. Instead of holding us to just speaking once, I think we should have a robust discussion that allows us to have a conversation. If people want to speak more than once, I think that would be democracy and accountable and transparent. We'll do it in front of the public gallery here, and I think we owe it to the people that are here tonight to hold a frank discussion without being hamstrung by the standing orders, which allow people to only speak once. But just to answer your question, Councillor Sweeney, yes, that's right. But as you would know from the report from Council, from page 104 and 105 of the officer's report contains significant implications for the Deputy Mayor's motion in front of us, and none of that information was available to this Council when Councillor Sabiri or myself or others spoke on the matter. It certainly wasn't available to me. So that's what I'm proposing, is just that we suspend standing orders, and that would only be in relation to Standing Orders Clause 7.11, and that would be to allow us all to speak freely on the matter. Governance, can we put that matter to the vote, please?
The motion to suspend standing orders clause 711 has been carried with 8 in favour, with the Deputy, Councillors Sabiri and Sweeney voting against that motion.
Thank you. I'd invite debate from the floor. Deputy Mayor, if you would like to take the opportunity, it's been a month since you last spoke. If you wanted to speak again to open the debate this evening, I'm certainly going to allow it.
Yeah, sure. Look, obviously I speak in favour of the motion. I'll follow on from debate last month when we spoke on the item, and I'll respond to a few comments that were critiques of my proposed motion. I mean, Mayor Hall referred to item 3 and he made a couple of statements and stated that it's asking council to write a blank cheque for a piece of land that no one can access. He asked where the benefit to the community was and that we're upgrading and revegetating land adjacent to a rubbish site. Then went on to critique the motion to asks to list appropriate funding in future budgets, asking whether it meant 5 million, 500,000, no one knows. Then went on to state that the motion would show little financial acumen by supporting an open-ended motion that doesn't have a dollar listed. Now, I believe there is referring to point 5, not point 3, which requests that the CEO list appropriate funding in future budgets, including the draft 23-24 budget, to enable the preservation, restoration and revegetation of the degraded bushland on Bush Forever Site 388. Now, during my time on council, 8 years nearly, it's been common practice for the Office of Recommendation to request the appropriate funding be included in the draft budget, because it's the budget process where the exact dollar figures are then discussed and where council has its say. In fact, only a few months ago, council unanimously supported a motion requesting the appropriate funding be included in the draft budget for bird waterers. At no point were concerns about financial acumen or open-ended motions. This motion, if you read it, does not request a blank cheque. It's not open-ended. Now, when you speak about what benefit there is to the community, it is constantly illustrated through our community engagement that the community wants council to invest in our environment, given we are one of the lowest rating councils with respect to our tree canopy cover. We have a council-adopted urban forest strategy and a council-adopted local biodiversity, which I'll again state that it states with less than 10% of the pre-European extent of native vegetation retained in the City of Canning, all remaining natural areas are high priority for conservation. The city has 5% of the remaining Banksia woodland, and this area contains much of it. Now, Director Bowe and his team have told me several times that a priority for the community through our strategic community plan is that the city engages in sustainable practices to combat climate change. It's a top 5 issue. I don't think bulldozing and fragmenting some of our last remaining Banksia woodland, a threatened ecological community of which 5% remains, would align with the community's desire for sustainable practices. When you talk about a lack of community access to this bushland as a reason not to protect it, it completely misses the mark. The fact that this is one of the few locations left in the City of Canning that has bushland largely removed from human activity is important. The environment needs undisturbed areas, otherwise flora and fauna go extinct. This area may have economic value that would be realised if we bulldoze the bush, but so does Adenia Park in the Canning River Regional Park, which the City of Canning owns freehold. We wouldn't imagine developing or selling that land, despite its high economic potential. Just because there's potential financial returns doesn't make it right to clear it. Now, less than a month ago, we heard that the land had questionable environmental value and it was a significantly small piece of land. As we heard in the deputation, it was repeatedly stated that 0.6 hectares of bush is being removed. This is factually incorrect. It doesn't align with the documents submitted by the city to the Commonwealth as part of its environmental approvals. I have no idea where it came from. The Jandakot Eastern Link Road disturbance area is 10.2 hectares, including 2.7 hectares of Bush Forever Site 388, including the Thornley-Coburn Link area. It doesn't even include, as we heard this evening, the clearing west of Canning's Land in the Jandakot Airport's holding land. As Dr. Wayon said, the 2020 master plan of Jandakot Airport proposes to send the connecting road network straight through the middle of their conservation site, leading to further clearing of native bushland. Now, with respect to Councillor Sabiri's comments last month, I just wanted to touch on the surprise that this motion or commentary may have provided with respect to previous opportunities to oppose this road. The reality is, whilst the MRS amendment came to Council in 2016, and we've had items like the advocacy statement come to Council for approval, the reality is that at no stage was Council ever provided with the level of detail that about this road that we've received over the last 18 months. I never saw a fauna or flora assessment of this site until relatively recently, after the city's kangaroo management plan was allegedly leaked to the media, causing community concern. I hadn't seen the Astron Consulting environmental impact assessment until the Commonwealth recently sought public comment on the road and the documentation was made public. This environment assessment highlighted the significant impact the road would have on Carnaby's cockatoos. Now, in 2016, councils were provided with a few lines on a map and a one-page submission to the WAPC on the MRS amendment. I'm disappointed as anyone that we've got to this stage where before I was able to properly consider the detail and make a decision, but that's the reality. Now, this motion, apart from number one, which is providing main roads, that council's decision is not to support the road, the rest is requesting for a report to be presented back to council. We're not making any major decisions on this. It will subsequently be provided later on. That's why I ask you to support this. As we've heard this evening, the community does. There are community members that are concerned with this road, despite previous commentary to the contrary.
Thank you, Deputy. Can I just ask, please, I don't want to have to ask people to leave the room, but I will ask you to leave the room, please. We won't have any clapping. It's a council meeting. So please, just show some respect. We've got a lot to go through. Sorry, I don't want to embarrass you, but this is not a forum for breaking out into applause. Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on the matter, please? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support this motion. I'm not going to go too much into detail about the environmental impacts of a road going through Bush Forever because I believe this has been well covered by those who've spoken in support already. I'm going to focus on the economics and the community because it is the community that we're elected to represent, and it's their money we're talking about spending here. Firstly, I'd like to establish a bit of a timeline. In '98, the Commonwealth Government privatised the Jandakot Airport. In October 2009, Jandakot Airport advertised its master plan for public comment. One of the key desires of this master plan was to link the airport to Ranford Road. Back then, option one was preferred, but strongly opposed by the community. At a council meeting in 2011, item CE 4311, it was stated, and I quote, "The council had consistently opposed a link road since January 2009, end quote." Now, this was for various reasons, but predominantly because of the environmental impacts and the increased traffic the link road would bring onto Ranford. In 2012, more than 80 members of the public attended a community meeting and all but two voted against all four options of the road alignments proposed. In 2013, the airport master plan was revised. However, the road alignment remained as option one, as mentioned earlier. In 2014, the Commissioners of Canning endorsed the airport master plan. For those newer councillors who may be wondering why I say commissioners, these are people who are put in place by the department. They're not elected members, and this was done because the council at the time was sacked. In 2020, the master plan was updated again, and this report detailed how the airport was about to contribute over $10 million for access road upgrades, including Roe Highway, Berrigan Drive and Carroll Ave. In July of 2021, it was published that option two was the preferred alignment based on the multi-criteria assessment conducted by the Department of Planning. Throughout this whole 12-year process, the main driver and beneficiary of this road has and always was been the airport, and indirectly the City of Coburn, not the City of Canning. We just happen to be the landowner that they want to build a road through, and that just happens to be Bush Forever. In November of 21, Dexus, a multi-billion-dollar ASX-listed company, announced that it had completed the initial settlement of acquisition of Jandakot Airport Perth, acquiring 100% of Jandakot City Holdings and 49% of the company which owns the ground lease, being Jandakot Airport Holdings, end quote. The 620 hectares of land holdings owned by Dexus and its partners was reportedly purchased for a whopping $1.5 billion. Now, Dexus are very proud of this acquisition. In fact, in their 2022 annual report, they boast the Jandakot Airport Holding Precincts comprises a high-quality established industrial portfolio of 53 income-producing industrial properties and circa 80 hectares of developable land. They also boasted a $1.6 billion net profit after tax in the 2022 financial year and have a property portfolio worth $44.3 billion. But back to us. We're being told that our circa $2 million investment in a road to link the airport to Ranford Road would have an economic uplift of our land holdings of about $2 million or 20%. Well, I'm no accountant, but basic math I can do. Approximately $2 million to build, maintain and make good on a road for a $2 million benefit is break even, right? But imagine what a 20% uplift on the land holding that's valued at $225 million of ready-to-develop land would be. It's about $90 million of a potential economic uplift. So let's look at the investment. The airport have committed pre-cost escalations, $600,000 for an estimated economic uplift of $90 million. Coburn, $500,000 investment for an annual return of $19.2 million. Yep, you heard me. The Airport Master Plan of 2020 says, and I quote, once the ultimate development of the Jandakot Airport estate is established, $19.2 million per year will be paid to the City of Coburn in lieu of rates. They currently receive about $4 million in lieu of rates. So we, the City of Canning, lose 3 hectares of Banksia woodlands, home to endangered and threatened species, and pay $2 million for a road that no council or member of the communities, for that matter, have ever endorsed or ever asked for. Last I checked, we were not in the business of funding roads for privately owned entities or for the financial gain of neighbouring local governments. If we agreed to build this road, it will be a gross misuse of ratepayers' funds. Mr Mayor, if I may please ask for another 2 minutes. I'm almost finished.
You just have to get council to support that. Can we just have a motion? We'll put over a vote, please, just to extend for 2 more minutes. Just a show of hands will do, please. All in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Thank you. Unanimously carried. Carry on, Councillor
Thank you. So I repeat, if we agreed to build this road, it would be a gross misuse of our ratepayers' funds. If we are successful in getting the sports centre fully externally funded and need access to it, we can build our own road networks as and when are needed. This can be incorporated into the build cost, or we can take advantage of the road network that will come with future developments of the area that somebody else can fully fund. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get main roads funding for a state government election commitment or initiative. The $5 million for Fifth Avenue and Rossmoyne intersection is a classic example. This motion is nothing new. It's merely following through on the recommendations and commitments made back in 2018, and it does nothing more than hold the 4 elected members who are in this room tonight who endorse the strategy and the city's administration to account. Councillors, we represent our ratepayers. Remember that when you make this very important decision tonight. Ask yourselves, do our hardworking ratepayers want or need this road? Do you want to increase rates again to pay for a road that no one in Canning is asking for? This is our only Bush Forever site. It's significant enough to be zoned Bush Forever, and it's a small piece of our nation's history that we have neglected for far too long. Look around, listen, take note. If you genuinely represent the Canning community and it's thanks and no regrets that you're looking for, then you need to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'm going to speak next. I'll come back to you, Councillor Hardeep Singh, unless you want to ask a question.
It's a question, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
go ahead.
Question to the CEO. How likely it is that Jandakot Eastern Link Road can be fully funded by other parties in the near future, main roads or Jandakot Airport, and City of Canning has to contribute $0 to this road?
CEO.
Thank you for the question. Look, it's a hypothetical. I would say unlikely, Councillor Singh.
I'm going to speak against the motion. I support the intent of the motion, but I speak against the motion because of the implications. And look, I wanted to point out, there's a lot of people in this room that I know and that many of us know. This council, and I don't think no one would argue with this council has on many occasions demonstrated a really genuine intent to contribute meaningfully to conservation efforts in this district, including the establishment and implementation of the city's urban forest strategy, the establishment of the Shelley-Rossmoyne Foreshore Management Plan, and the city's ongoing support and assistance to a vast array of local conservation groups, many of whom are represented here. We've also built, staffed and continue to fund the Canning River Eco-Education Centre on the banks of the Canning River. And among other notable projects, this council invested more than $1 million transforming the derelict Wharf Street stormwater basin into an environmental paradise for birds, amphibians, etc. We also allocated a multi-million dollars of funding to restore our Canning River, and we worked really hard to advocate with Circle and others to secure a lot of money to assist in the restoration of our rivers. In relation to the Jandakot Eastern Link project, while I understand the concerns, the reality is that whilst a relatively small area, and I'll say that it is a relatively small area of bush will be affected, and I know it'll be affected, in compensation there will be a complete restoration and revegetation of over 65 hectares of land. 65 hectares on that site. The city will revegetate a degraded portion of existing Bush Forever Site 388, adding enclosed road reserves into the conservation estate. The area will be fenced, and that funding has already been committed to. Additional offsets of, I believe, 6 hectares or about that of Banksia woodland has been already committed to by the state government, and $250,000 has already been committed by this council to rescue and relocate a population of kangaroos on the site. Councillors, I recognise the environmental concerns that some of you may have in relation to the construction of the Jandakot Eastern Link Road, but this city is really not bulldozing through a road without real consideration to the environment. That has not ever been the intent of this city or this council. However, councillors, we are a large urban council, and the Jandakot Eastern Link Road has been long identified as an important transport link of regional significance. It's not just about the City of Canning. We play a role as a leading local government, a Tier 1 local government. We have a regional responsibility. It will unlock a significant amount of freehold commercial land, the last really of that size owned by the city, and providing unknown revenue potential and opportunity for this city and future generations. It's an enabling infrastructure which will play a key role in the regional economic growth and dynamism of Perth's southern region. Look, I've made it clear from the start, I've always been of the view that good councils make a compromise, and I support the intent of the Deputy Mayor. I just feel that it has probably gone a little bit too far, and I'd like to find some middle ground here in regards to the Eastern Link Road. I think we've got a real opportunity tonight to genuinely balance our environmental responsibilities that we all take so seriously with our duty to play a key role as a responsible local government in this region, and a responsibility to our residents to manage our finances on behalf of our citizens. Whilst I acknowledge the intent of the motion, I would refer Council to page 104 of the Officer's report, where it speaks to the implications of following through on the motion that you have in front of you. There's an uncertainty about whether or not a number of the matters addressed in the items addressed in the motion can actually be carried through. And that uncertainty is not something that Council should be rushing to adopt tonight. I urge councillors to revisit pages 104 and 105 of the report whilst I'm speaking. It's compelling reading that can't be dismissed or ignored. So tonight, councillors, I'm actually going to propose a foreshadowed motion which allows Council to receive further information in relation to the matters concerning it before returning to discuss the matter no earlier than December this year. It raises and highlights a number of actions which will take place, including environmental concerns, and it's up on the board there at the moment. I've already emailed everybody yesterday. And this council should not, I feel, rush into a decision tonight. We should take the opportunity to seek a sensible and responsible compromise to satisfy all of our needs, and they are both environment and also to our city. I have also held the long belief, and I've mentioned this many times in this room, that the only way that this city can actually address the pressure on rates is to find beneficial enterprises that will help us draw revenue and put downward pressure on rate increases. So I hope that there's a position that council can reach tonight where we come back as a council in December this year to consider this matter, having been provided with an awful lot more information to answer all the questions that have been raised by a number of councillors here this evening. So I would urge you not to rush into a decision tonight, but to support the foreshadowed motion, which can later be amended again and another foreshadow motion can be brought, but it allows us to actually ask and answer some questions that are vitally important, balancing environment and our fiscal responsibility as a board of directors. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Hardeep Singh, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Overall, I agree with most of the points raised by Deputy Mayor's motion, especially point 1, 3, and 4. However, I have concerns regarding point 2 and 5, especially given that listening to all the deputations, most of the time human efforts fall short of restoring a natural environment, especially the degraded one. So I'm not too sure how much of our interference is needed into this Bush Forever site. It is my belief to leave it as it is and let's not disturb the nature. Hence, I would like to propose an amendment. I would like to move an amendment that all 5 of these points to be voted separately.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a view on that in relation to voting on them all separately?
And Mr. Mayor, I would like to request Deputy Mayor, if he's happy to take 2 and 5 out as an amendment, I'm happy to propose that as an amendment to the motion.
You're talking about deleting 2 and 5?
That's right.
I'm
happy with both amendments. So deleting 2 and 5, Deputy Mayor may argue that it's negating the motion. So if that is the case, I'm happy to propose the amendment to be voted separately.
It can't be an amendment, though, if it actually negates the motion and it has a completely different intent. So what you can do is propose a foreshadowed motion, which I have just done. They are actually dealt with in order. But I would think that by deleting significant parts of the Deputy Mayor's motion, which is before council to consider at the moment, by deleting that, that is not an amendment. That is a significant change to the...
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. That's your call. And I would say I would like to move an amendment for all 5 items to be voted separately.
I have no issue with that. I have no issue with that. Deputy Mayor?
I was just going to suggest if it, in terms of expediency, to vote on 1, 3 and 4 and 2 and 5 as separate. So as blocks, 1, 3 and 4, and then vote on 2 and 5 together.
Councillor Singh, did you hear that?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
Governance? Just stand by, councillors. Councillors, the issue we're having at the moment is that by actually voting on these separately, if some items are accepted and some are not, they'll have serious implications on the ability of the city to actually implement them. Councillor Singh, this is why it's so important to actually bring these things to the council and provide staff with the opportunity to comment on them. To do this last minute like this really just causes chaos. Just stand by, councillors.
what we're saying is that we're relinquishing the money.
Councillors, can I just ask you, please, just to hold on for a moment?
That's the statement.
Councillors, the decision will be that we'll vote on 1, 3 and 4 separately, and then we will vote on 2 and 5 separately. Thank you, councillors. Anyone else like to speak on the item? Councillor, you asked a question?
Yes, just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, did you say it's accepted we are voting on 1, 3 and 4 together and 2 and 5 together separately?
Absolutely, that's it. Spot on. Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Let me just get my... so I don't support this motion. Canning is an over $10 billion GDP economy. We're the third biggest in WA. We're a city, not a town, not a paddock, not a bushland. And this is very fascinating because if you look at the map, it's the end of the runway. And an end of the runway is no price for a bird sanctuary. Air safety is a priority, and this is the busiest airport in all of Australia, in all of the Southern Hemisphere. And so I don't think we're looking at this from a holistic approach. Originally, we were the Canning Road Board, and the car park here tonight is full. I couldn't actually park in here, and the Deputy Mayor couldn't park in there either, so we had to park out there. So who of us didn't drive here? I've heard arguments about, I don't know, sort of like neo-watermelon type arguments where we'll talk about watermelon is you're green on the outside and you're red on the inside, and anyone that makes money is instantly a bad guy. I mean, if you've got someone that's owning an airport and it's worth $1.6 billion, well, that's great. And guess what? We're right next to it. So why wouldn't you tap into that? And look, as the Mayor says, this is not anti-conservation. I mean, if you look at the map, page 75, you've got the road coming through, you've got a large swath of area for environmental conservation area, and also a Canning Vale sports complex. So you're getting a good community value because you're going to get the Canning Vale sports complex. You're getting a bit of land for your environmental conservation area. I'd actually argue that's a very good outcome because, I mean, if you look at around the other airport, what the other Coburn's done, it's pretty much all light industrial, and it's premium land because it falls underneath the remit of the federal government, so you don't have to do so much planning. So yeah, I can't support this. I don't think we just can't sort of have the sort of ostrich mentality where we stick our head in the sand and hope that all these things go away. This road, I think, needs to go through. It has a direct economic benefit, and the city makes money, and it's not bad. We make money off ratepayers, and ratepayers need to make money for us to tax them. So it's not like, oh, making money's bad. I mean, I lived overseas in a communist country, and yeah, I've heard it all before, but I mean, since when is putting a road through, encouraging economic development and having money? You're not going to have any money to support economic conservation if you don't have a tax base, and it's a city. Look at this map. Perth is it's going to be like a 4 million. The population of Perth is going to be like 4 million by about 2050. So if you want to go to the countryside, then that's great, and you could buy large swathes of land. But this is a city. Any way you look at this, it's a city. There's an airport. It's the biggest airport, busiest airport in. I mean, I don't understand what we're not getting here. It's right at the end of a runway. If you want to do conservation, take it somewhere else. But this is not the area to conserve. I mean, it's a bit like going to the CBD and saying you want to, turn St George's Terrace into like a waterway or something. So I can't support it. I don't think there's any money for a fence either. And I think we're losing the bigger picture here. So yeah, I'm not a fan of either of this, and I will be supporting the Mayor's foreshadowed motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Sabiri. Sorry, I thought I saw you looked like you were about to put your hand up. So
I was thinking of it. Well, look, I'm going to support, I will still support Deputy Mayor Kunz's motion that's in front of us. We've heard from people in the gallery. We've heard actually from Councillor Spencer Teo. And one of the points that was raised was about the 2009 community consultation, that no one actually supported that except two people in the room. And one of the things that keeps coming up when this comes to council, I keep saying, have we consulted with Dr. Eddie Warren? Have we consulted with Friends of Kenhurst Park? And every time the response is, no, we haven't. Why? Because is that because we don't want to hear alternatives? I really don't know why. But anyways, we heard from Dr. 81 tonight. We've heard from other conservationists in the room tonight, most of which are scientists as well. I just want to make clear that there is, again, it was raised tonight again, there is no sporting complex. So why would we build a road for a sporting complex that isn't there yet? It doesn't make sense. And again, the Jandakot Eastern Link Road will be going through Bush Forever 388, which involves clearing of TEC and key species of Banksia woodland, which then means endangering our endangered Carnaby cockatoos even further, pretty much dragging them into extinction. So I really like to urge other councillors in the room to vote for Deputy Mayor Kunz's motion tonight. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Councillor Mark Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting all 5 points of the adjourned motion not to proceed with the design of the Jandakot Eastern Link Road and to amend the reserve classification to environmental conservation. I hope tonight we can give real meaning to the title Bush Forever. We have such few remaining stands of remnant bushland in Canning. Bush Forever Site 388 is unique, not just because of its rarity, but also its flora and fauna. It is habitat for priority and significant species. It is also a connection to Canning's natural history, a link that is becoming increasingly tenuous. Offsets and revegetation simply cannot replace it. It is my hope that future projects that involve the disturbance of highly valued ecological areas are brought to Council for a decision sooner, before advanced concept plans are drawn up, significant resources committed and grant funding applied for. If we proceed with building a road in an area identified as Bush Forever, at what point will we stop? What will make us reconsider damaging valuable bushland? Protecting Bush Forever Site 388 for all of its remarkable flora and fauna and investing in its restoration for future generations of Canning is a decision that can be looked back upon as a significant achievement for this council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Anyone else wish to speak? Either for or against? I'll just say something further, just in relation to the reference to Bush Forever. Look, I just wanted to clear that up because there's been a number of times it's been raised and people are wondering, you know, what does Bush Forever mean? The Western Australian Government's own site, its Bush Forever policy commences with the following paragraph. The policy recognises the protection and management of significant bushland areas as a fundamental consideration in the planning process, whilst also seeking to integrate and balance wider environmental, social and economic considerations. In general terms, the policy, and this is the Bush Forever policy, the policy does not prevent development where it is consistent with the measures in this policy and other planning and environmental considerations. It doesn't prevent development, it just means it must be taking into account reasonably and sensibly considerations of the environment. And that is why the state government's been able to build roads and push the freeway north and open up those communities and MetroNet and all these infrastructure projects that have an enormous benefit, not only for this generation, but also for future generations. But they do so, that government does so with a genuine intent to also compensate for the damage that has been caused. I'm just a little worried tonight that by supporting, and I know we're voting on the Deputy Mayor's motion and we're voting for it in two parts, but if we only end up with part of that, if we don't actually end up with all of it, we are going to be far worse off than adopting the foreshadowed motion. So if we were, for instance, to adopt 2 and 5, for instance, and not 1, 3 and 4, and that may be what some people may be considering. They would be proceed with proposed environmental revegetation rehabilitation fund projects at lot 166 and 167, and amend the budget in accordance with section 6.8 by allocating the $250,000 set aside toward the fencing required, yada yada. 5. List appropriate funding in the future budgets, including the draft 2023-24 budget, to enable the preservation, restoration and revegetation of the degraded bushland on the Bush Forever site. But what that doesn't include is an environmental assessment, secure provisional funding commitments, not push ahead with it, but at least provide that information for council. Write to the Minister asking for potential extension of the time required to meet our obligations under that contract, prepare a feasibility report for council, develop a proposal, and this is a big one, develop a proposal which would see a proportion of any future revenue generated by that freehold land being reinvested into funding the ongoing conservation of the environmental open space and Bush Forever site. So that's what I mean by striking a balance, and that balance won't be undertaken by adopting what is before you tonight. And I think that's a key point in this, and present those outcomes in December. So my real fear of this is that we end up with half of what is in front of us, or none at all, but half of what's in front of us, and we end up with a worse outcome than any of us actually encourage. So I'm speaking against it and encourage you to support the foreshadowed. Yes, Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Just some questions, considering you've raised it. The ERW, the Environmental Revegetation Rehabilitation Fund, can go ahead regardless of the road, correct?
I believe that's the case. Director Bride.
Through Ms Mayor, yes, that is correct.
So that's not really a concern. The $250,000 for the fence is, CEO confirmed that that's no longer an immediate requirement or contingent upon the revegetation of the 65 hectares. Again, am I correct?
Director Bride.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, the fencing is subservient to some earthworks and some site surveying, so that would have to be done before any expenditure on the fencing component. And
we could always use some of the $400,000 that's been put aside in the urban forest strategy every year to revegetate, kind of also taking care of point 5 as well. We don't have to allocate additional funds. We could use those funds because this would certainly qualify as the urban forest strategy, one of the outcomes of that, correct?
Director Bowe.
Yes, that's correct, Mr Mayor, but obviously we'd have to balance the delivery of those projects foregone.
And just a question for you, Mr Mayor, or Mr Littleton, CEO Littleton. What type of assessment are you hoping to get from this foreshadowed motion? And what is wrong with the 4 that you already have?
CEO.
The intent of some of the wording, if you're specifically in reference to the environmental consideration, what the city report spoke about was looking at through the detailed design, really narrowing in and focusing on ways to mitigate, or ways that the design could seek to mitigate the environmental impacts.
Sorry,
Sorry,
I'm not sure you've got the question right. I'm talking in respect to the foreshadowed motion that Mr Mayor has presented, where he's asking for another environmental assessment.
As I said, I think the intent was in the design to look to introduce further elements. So they were high fencing. They would be narrowing the pavement widths and all of those sorts of things that would seek to mitigate those broader environmental concerns. So the intent was to apply some rigour to those design elements that we would seek to introduce and to then come back and clarify that they would be able to further mitigate the fragmentation and the impacts on the environment that had been contemplated. So that was the work that we were looking to do. There was obviously a number of other elements in the foreshadowed motion. Some of that was about seeking to crystallise or clarify the revenue generational opportunities that the city might be able to bring forward, and then how some of that money could be used to offset the environmental costs or the conservation costs in the long term. So it was a much more sustainable source of revenue to ensure that we'd get improved environmental outcomes. So all of those were the things that were proposed.
So
and just since you asked the question of us both, I'll also respond, only to reiterate what the CEO has said, but also Councillor Spencer-Teo. I mean, obviously, the more information that this council has in front of us, the better. We have a lot of people here that are actually interested in, obviously, the conservation value of that area. And so I would think that any environmental assessment that might provide either better information, more relevant, more recent information, you can shake your head and raise your eyes and whatever you like, but that's the reality of it. I would have thought that would be a better outcome to actually provide this council with more information rather than less information. So that's the genuine intent of it.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I would just like to ask you if you recalled the amendment that I moved in, I think it was June last year, which actually deferred the $250,000 expenditure on the road, which was supported by council, subject to a report coming back in September. Now, September came and went, and we had SIB after SIB after SIB, and here we are in May. You could basically say we've given administration almost an entire year to provide that information.
Is there a question coming, Councillor Spencer-Teo?
Yes. Why have you chosen December? Why not before the election?
Well, if you would have received your emails today. There's actually a bill being introduced to Parliament, I think today or yesterday, and that's the local government reforms. It introduces a caretaker period, and that will actually prevent councils, possibly, whilst I haven't read it in full, from making decisions exactly like this one in the lead up to an election. And considering that our election is in October and that candidates are able to nominate in August, I think it's August, or it might be the 1st of September, it would seem prudent and good governance to actually have this matter come back after that election, because that will be in keeping with the local government reform bill that was introduced to Parliament this week.
So this is because there's an imminent caretaker period coming, not because administration needs time. Is that what you're saying? Because
I think
the 9 months hasn't been sufficient that they've had to provide this information?
Obviously there's going to be time required to provide the information required and asked for in here. Some of it's to ask for key stakeholder commitments around financial commitment to the potential road, and that's not going to happen overnight. So there are conversations and assessments that we will be contingent on other parties to provide, and they might be time contingent and we can't control that. So yeah, I think it's prudent for a whole range of reasons, and December was settled upon mostly because of the bill being released in the last 2 days, and there was an email came out today in relation to that.
So the fact that my amendment wasn't actually implemented, which the September date was actually given to me by administration, that's not an issue. That's just how. So we just make dates up.
What is it that you're trying to get to here? Just speak plainly. What
is
it
that basically
that you
what
ask?
I'm saying is that this was supposed to come to a report was supposed to come to council in September. It didn't happen. We then had a SIB in November. We then had another SIB in February. Then we received more information, and now we've received even more information. And now you're asking for potentially a new council or half of a new council to make a decision on something that's been going for at least 14 years. So I'm just confused as to your rationale as to why.
I'm not sure that you're confused at all, but thank you for raising it. But that's not an unusual thing for new councils to actually implement decisions of previous councils. I don't think anyone around this table would think that there would be wholesale changes to this council in October. There may well be, but I doubt it very much. There'll be a core component of this council still on this council, and I would think that it would be disrespectful to any member that would be elected to a future council to think that they wouldn't be able to reach a decision. It would be the administration's role to bring them up to speed and to brief them on those matters and to actually do a handover on those projects. We've had a number of significant matters that we've had to deal with, significant legal matters that we've had to deal with, and that new councillors have had to deal with very soon after being elected to this council. I see this no different.
Well, let's just hope that it does come back in December then, because mine was
I'll make sure
6
it comes
months
back
late.
in December. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I speak?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Based on CEO's reply, given that it is unlikely that somebody else will fund this road fully for us, I absolutely do not see any value for ratepayers' money to be spent on this road. And given that the scenario, on top of that, we got major environmental concerns. It is my belief that it is best to leave this site as it is untouched and not spend any money on it whatsoever. Just leave the nature alone. So I will definitely support point 1, 3, and 4 to leave it untouched, but not in so much support of point 2 and 5 to interfere either way, either to degrade or to regenerate the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Can I just propose an amendment following on from your contribution on your concerns with inconsistencies, following on from Councillor Spencer Teo's questions to Director Bride on point 2 and the commentary in the report. It appears that the $250,000 for the fencing is irrelevant, so I'd like to propose to amend to remove everything after Canning Vale in point 2. So that it just says proceed with proposed environmental revegetation rehabilitation fund project at lots 166 and 167 Clifton Road, Canning Vale, full stop, which is the main part of that motion, that part, and remove the subsequent commentary, which is no longer relevant.
So you want everything in the first line and halfway through the second line to the
Remain.
word Canning Vale, and including the word Canning Vale, then full stop, and everything
then,
that starts with and amend the budget, etc., etc., etc.
Yes, that's correct, and I think that'll provide some certainty towards yourself and also to Councillor Singh, who was concerned with the allocation of the $250,000 as per this motion, which is not relevant anymore.
Director Bride, can I just ask, are there any inadvertent consequences of doing so?
Through Mr. Mayor, I might ask my colleague, Director Driscoll, just to identify whether we need the absolute majority vote if Part 2 was stopped after Canning Vale. It doesn't align the budget.
Director Driscoll, would we still require an absolute majority for that item?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there's no requirement for that with that amendment.
CEO?
Look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, whilst we have confirmed, and I have done this directly to Councillor Spencer Teo, that the fencing for that site is no longer required or no longer a fundamental part of the works. It is no longer an impediment to the works commencing, which is what had been previously indicated. But what is required is irrigation to be provided to that site. So if we are to continue to proceed with that project, there will be a requirement for the city to make investment, and that investment is largely, as I understand, $400,000 in the draft budget for irrigation and other capital works to facilitate that revegetation works.
Thank you. If there's no one else wishing to speak, I might ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate.
Does that require a seconder?
Does what require a seconder?
Or is it just
Ben,
a
I'm
minor
going to take
amendment?
it as a... I don't think it changes the intent of it. I think it's a minor amendment. I'm happy to accept it. What I'll do is I might actually put it to the vote. Can I have a seconder, please, for the amendment? Councillor Spencer-Teo. Got it. Councillor Spencer-Teo is the seconder. Councillor Deputy Mayor, I'm not certain you need to speak to it, but if you'd like to, you certainly can.
Oh, look, I just want to say, I've already said what my reasoning. We're just voting on this amendment right now and it's superfluous. So I think in terms of helping council make a decision one way or the other, removing this provides a bit more clarity. So I hope you support it.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo, anything you'd like to add? Councillors, we're going to vote in relation to the amendment put by the Deputy Mayor, and it is on screen now. So it's to delete all of which is highlighted in red. It will mean that the item is item 2 of the 5-point foreshadowed motion is no longer requiring an absolute majority. I'll put that to the vote.
The amendment to Part 2 of CD 00623 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Deputy Mayor, I'll invite you then to close debate if you would like to do so. I think everybody has spoken, and if we're all done.
Yep, I'm happy to close debate. Look, I'll just respond to a couple of comments that were made. The Mayor referenced in his commentary about examples of what the city's done for environmental conservation was the Wharf Street Basin, a safe haven for birds and amphibians. The regrettable thing, whilst great work the city has done, it is surrounded by roads. And I'll take you back to the Mayor did a wonderful thing by stepping out into Albany Highway to stop traffic because a group of ducks were walking from the city of Canning right here across to the Wharf Street Basin because they were going through water bodies. That's what happens when you put roads through water bodies. Animals try to get across. That's what will happen here. You can put fencing in that, but animals will try to cross. I've been involved in trying to get mitigating infrastructure to stop the animals crossing from Piney Lakes to Burragoon Lake in Melville because they walk across Leach Highway and get hit by cars. It was not commented that it's long been identified as a link, this road. The MRS amendment came into effect in July 2017. Now, last month, it was referenced row 8 as an example. That was in the MRS since the 1950s, and that's not going ahead. The Jandakot Eastern Link Road is not a long identified link. It was put in the MRS in 2017. Bush Forever became in 2000. If you look at the Bush Forever maps, this site was particularly identified as a core conservation area. Regrettably, the sale of Jandakot Airport and then commercialisation has led to over 200 hectares of Banksia woodland being cleared, and there's not much left. Councillor Jacobs spoke about an urban environment and about Perth not being a paddock. The real disappointing thing is if you go out of Perth, everything's cleared as well. South West Australia is one of the most cleared places on the planet. If it's not cleared for residential housing, it's cleared for agricultural reasons. If you go into the hills, it's been cleared for mining. We've hardly got anything left, and we need to keep what we have. Perth is a city, that it is, but under that philosophy, we should be developing Kings Park. The reality is that we need to keep some environmental land for conservation and the other creatures that reside here too. So I request that you support my motion, and I'll leave it to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and we will do exactly what was asked earlier, and that is that we will vote separately on 1, 3 and 4, and then in a moment we will also cast a vote for 2 and 5. We will put 1, 3 and 4 to the vote. Thank you, Governance.
Parts 1, 3 and 4 of adjourned motion CD 00623 has been carried with 8 in favour and 3 voting against. Those voting against the motion is the Mayor Hall, Councillors Jacobs and Parkinson.
Thank you, councillors. We move to items 2 and 5 then. We'll vote on those separately. Governance, please call the vote.
Parts 2 and 5 of adjourned motion CD 006 has been carried, 7 in favour and 4 voting against. Those voting against, Mayor Hall, Councillors Jacobs, Parkinson and Singh.
Thank you. The matter's been carried. Thank you, Councillor. That was a really tough effort. Thanks to everyone who attended tonight. I'm sure you're pleased with the outcome. I thank you for your contribution. Please feel free to leave if you'd like to. We'll be here for some time yet. Thank you. We will move on then to CD 008 of 23, and that's the adoption of Scheme Amendment number 11 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, the introduction of additional use provisions within Schedule B, additional uses for the Willetton Industrial Area. Councillor Singh, you have an alternative motion here. After what you've heard tonight, do you still want to propose that motion?
No, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the officer's recommendation then. Thank you, Councillor Singh. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It's also on page 123 of tonight's agenda. Councillors, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Jacobs is the mover. Councillor Spencer Teo is the seconder. Councillor Jacobs, would you like to kick us off, please?
Yeah, I think it's important. I have some notes here. We had Mr. and Mrs. Devonish today talk about, I found that quite beneficial for my benefit. It's light industrial, and I think that the uses that we have here do not go against the intent of light industrial. Yeah, A, B, C, D. Yeah, that's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Just to say that I support the officer's recommendation, and I'd love to be able to wish you a happy retirement at the end of this.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the matter? I'll also speak in favour of it. Obviously, I think it's a sensible conclusion, and I support the proposal from the administration, and I appreciate this support of those that have already spoken on it. I think it provides greater flexibility to a smaller but very important and very long-standing industrial precinct in the city of Canning, and I think it's a sensible result. So thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the matter before we close? Councillor Jacobs, no one has spoken against the matter, so that being the case, I won't ask you to actually close. There's nothing to rebut. Councillors will put the matter to the vote.
Motion CD 008 has been carried unanimously. That's all 11 in favour.
Mr and Mrs, don't make me throw you out, Mr Devonish. You heard me before about clapping, for God's sake. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. Obviously, you're free to go. Enjoy your retirement, as Councillor Spencer Teo said. Appreciate you coming down. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. We move then to the next item. Just let me catch up for a moment, councillors. The next item in front of us is item 12, reports of committee meetings. There are none. Item 13, reports. The first report is from the Office of the CEO. It's OC 005 of 23. That's the annual review of delegations of authority for 2022 and 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen. We require an absolute majority for this item, councillors. The recommendation is on page 5 of the agenda and is on screen now. Can I have a mover for that item, please? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll second that then from the Chair. Deputy Mayor?
Nothing to add.
I have nothing to add either, other than I support the recommendation as is. Anyone wish to speak against it? Let's put that matter to the vote. Thank you, Governance.
Motion OC 005 has been carried by absolute majority with 10 in favour, noting that Councillor Jacobs was out of the room for the vote.
Thank you for that. We move then to the Office of the Director of Corporate and Commercial. Ms Lorraine Driscoll is the responsible officer. The first report being CC 008 of 23, proposed road closure, portion of Castle Adair Place in Wilson. The officer's recommendation is on screen, also appears on page 13 of the agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that matter? Councillor Bain is the mover. Thank you, Councillor Bain. And a seconder? I'll move it from Councillor Sabiri. You can move it. Councillor Sabiri is our seconder. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sabiri?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, we have CC's, next item is CC 009 of 23, proposed differential. Oh, let's put it to the vote, councillors. It's been a long night, even though it's only 10 to 8. Let's put that matter to the vote.
Motion CC 008 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We move to CC 009 of 23, proposed differential rating for 2023-2024. The recommendation is on page 19 of the agenda and is on screen. Councillor Singh, I understand you had an alternate motion. I'm not going to entertain it. I'm going to move this from the chair, and I'll call for a seconder. You can actually propose yours as a foreshadowed motion, as I did earlier in this evening. I don't propose to bring it as an alternate. Can I have a seconder, please, for the item? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, I speak in favour of the proposed differential rating for the city, and I note that we're simply going out to advertising on this matter, and I support the fact that we will be asking for public submissions. Council hasn't made a decision yet on exactly where we will fall. We're still considering all of those matters in relation to our budget. We're only halfway through our budget process. I think we've got our 4th budget meeting coming up. So I would propose that Council supports the proposed differential rating this evening and then moves to discuss the matter during the budget process and listens to the public submissions that we receive in relation to that matter. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor Hall, I support the officer recommendation. I support advertising the 4.65% increase at this stage so that council can make a decision when we come to budget time. We can't advertise a 0% increase and then subsequently increase it when we realise we can't identify the savings. But we can advertise a 4.65% and then work on the budget in the coming months and then bring it down as we identify savings. Look, there's more discussion to be had, and I fully agree with Councillor Singh in the fact that we need to identify as many savings as we can to reduce impact on ratepayers. And I look forward to the CEO presenting more on identified savings in our operating budget to make sure staffing is sustainable. But at this stage, 4.65% isn't that massive when you consider that we are a low-rating council and the inflationary pressures at the moment. When you consider that the state government just increased the fees and charges, I think, by $140 last week, in an environment where they're making multi-million-dollar surpluses. They've increased water charges when you combine dividends, tax, all the various payments made by the Water Corp to the state government, $1.2 billion they're paying to the state government, yet they've still increased water rates. I know local governments always get identified when we're increasing rates, but you only have to look at what the state government's doing more than us, and in an environment where they're increasing, where they've got massive surpluses. We're actually trying to balance our budget. So I don't think $60 is that massive, but I guess we'll have to look at what the residents say to us through this mechanism. The ESL increasing by 5%, that's more than we're increasing our rates, proposing to, I should say. But as I said, I support looking at further savings and looking at what we may be able to do in the coming financial year or put on hold that we might not have to do to reduce pressure. But it's better to advertise the current rate and then bring it down rather than advertise a much lower rate and then seek to increase it when we realise we can't fund our core services and asset renewal, which we need to do. So that's why I support putting this to advertising.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Singh, did you wish to speak against it and propose your foreshadowed motion?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. As per last,
the meeting's already moved on, Councillor Singh.
I can still raise a point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'm raising a point of order. As per Standing Orders Local Law 2015, Section 8.2, number 1, presiding member has no authority to either make a decision on alternative motion. If it does, please educate me or guide me where it is written.
I rule against the point of order, Councillor. I do have a discretion to allow it or not allow it. This is not a matter for argument. I'm making a ruling. I'm ruling against it. I'm asking you to actually either propose your foreshadowed motion or not. That I have made a ruling.
Mr. Mayor, my point of order is against your ruling. The standing orders doesn't give presiding member the authority to make a ruling on an alternative motion.
In what is the clause that you're referring to, Councillor?
8.21. It's the gist is our standing orders doesn't say anything on alternative motion, which means presiding member has no authority on alternative motion.
You're saying that it says nothing about it, so I have no authority. Is that what you're saying?
That's
You're
right.
actually completely wrong. So the standing orders actually give me authority for any matter in the standing orders in which the standing orders is silent, that I have ultimate authority to make a ruling on that matter. And that is covered by standing orders. Give me a moment and I'll find it for you.
That will be nice. Thank you.
14.2, page 29 of the standing orders, where local laws do not apply. In situations where A, one or more clauses of this local law have been suspended, or B, a matter is not regulated by the Act, the regulations or this local law, the presiding member is to decide questions relating to the conduct of the meeting. Full stop. It's not a matter for discussion, Councillor. I've made a ruling.
Just asking, which one? 14.1 and which point, Mr. Mayor?
14.21.
14.21. Can I please have a minute to read and understand it?
We're going to move on with the meeting because you've actually raised a point of order. I've ruled against it. You reading it and understanding it is not going to assist.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Can we please move on? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
May I please ask a question?
Yeah, of
the
course.
information that Councillor Singh is asking for in his alternate motion, can that be provided in a budget workshop that's coming up?
Of course it can. Yeah, absolutely it
Are you
can.
happy with that, Councillor Singh? You're going to get the information, just not. It's on the public record.
And just to clarify, so the information which I asked for CEO to provide a list of projects which in total are worth $5 million, which can be delayed or cancelled. Is that the information we are referring to? Is that right? Just want to confirm.
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think it is very difficult to identify $5 million worth of operating and capital within our current budget that can be deferred without understanding the broad parameters that the city would like me to contemplate and apply to our budget papers. So we, as you know, have worked very hard to try and reduce what is already a deficit position. There is, in the context of our budget, a range of non-discretionary and discretionary projects at a capital level. I am more than happy to bring that to council for their consideration next week. But you know, listing $5 million worth of operating and capital savings and the parameters within which I would prioritise them is very difficult for me to do when we've already presented and worked very hard to present the budget papers to elected members through 3 budget workshops and individual budget conversations with you all. So we will do our very best to bring a range of projects forward to achieve that. The value of providing $5 million worth of savings where you're trying to provide $2 million worth of cuts also is very difficult to do in the broad context of what I would do versus what you would do. So we will do our best. We have a budget workshop next week, and we will that will be the right opportunity to contemplate where our budget sits going forward.
Thank you. Did you still want to propose your foreshadowed motion?
Can I ask a question, Mr Mayor?
Yes, of course you can.
If, as point 4.14.2, where local laws do not apply, section 2, the decision of the presiding member under subclause 1 is final except when a motion is moved and carried under clause 10.9. Would that mean that if Councillor Singh is not happy with your ruling, he could move for dissent, but if that is not upheld by council, then your ruling would be final? Is that the interpretation of this?
That's pretty much it,
Yeah.
Councillor. I guess in an instance like this, you know, when you have to weigh up whether or not you feel that the matter is going to be supported by the councillor, whether you're wasting council's time by proceeding to that. So, look, in this instance, the meeting's already moved on. So I'm not certain that that would occur. That would have to happen at the time. Councillor Singh, I'll ask you to speak against the motion if that's what you'd like to do, but introduce your foreshadowed motion so at least it's on the record and in the minutes.
Can I speak or ask questions on this ruling, if I'm allowed to? Basically, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I can move the motion as Councillor Jesse Jacob says against your ruling. It's just not consistent that in last 1.5 years, pretty much every alternative motion has been allowed, and this is the first one ever.
Yeah, I'd be very careful with that. I'm not sure if it's the first one ever in 4.5 years'
No,
time.
in 1.5 since I've
I
been a
thought you said
councillor.
4.5 years.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my mistake.
Look, this is a really important matter. We've already workshopped I don't want to get into a big discussion about it because I've already ruled on it. But Councillor Singh, the whole idea of coming tonight is to run through the order of business. And whilst you're able to, if you'd like, propose an alternate, when you're proposing something that is so diametrically different to what council has been discussing, and you would probably concede yourself that you would probably think maybe there's not wholesale support in the room. I wonder whether there's a benefit to council spending time discussing and debating it when simply what we can do is know that you've got a foreshadowed motion that you'd like considered if this one actually fails, and people then know that they've got a fallback position. I don't understand what the issue is really. Whether your alternate motion is put and defeated by council and we go straight to this recommendation or vice versa, it really probably doesn't have any order. But considering this is a very important matter, it's the rate in the dollar, I moved it from the chair. I just didn't think it was appropriate to introduce your alternate motion. But we've moved on. Can we perhaps take this offline? If you'd like to speak to the matter or speak against the matter, please do so. But if you'd like to propose your foreshadowed motion, I'll be happy to entertain it. Then at least, Hardeep, it's in the minutes for tonight's meeting.
I would like to propose the foreshadow motion, please.
Governance, can we have the foreshadowed motion then put on the screen for the benefit of council? Councillor Singh, is that your foreshadowed motion? You're happy with the wording that's reflective of the motion you would like council to...
There is one, yeah, thank you. There is one more point, point 5, which was not coming in the screen, so thank you very much, yes.
Can I get governance just to... Oh, we've got it
Yeah.
on there now?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillors...
And just want to say, because there was a bit of confusion, Councillor Spencer Teo asked that the information will be provided and CEO confirmed it is difficult to provide. So this foreshadow motion is all about getting that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion in front of us this evening? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you. I've just got a quick question for the CEO, trying to get back on track here. Just in relation to the Western Power, how much extra, if you can estimate, is it going to cost ratepayers if the Western Power rise goes through?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, at this stage, we are not aware of the outcome of the environmental regulators' consideration of Western Power's proposal to increase their tariffs by 43%. If the 43% tariff rate is applied, it will cost the city an additional $830,000. We won't know for a number of weeks whether that rate has been endorsed or not.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, it's just going to complicate matters, isn't it, I suppose, with our upcoming budget talks, because it's quite vital that we have that information. But is it what you're saying? We're not going to get it for some weeks, is that right?
We could possibly get it, but it might be unlikely. We've got a meeting tomorrow with at 8:30 in the morning. The CEO and I are meeting with the Honourable Bill Johnson, the Minister for Energy, just to discuss a number of matters, including this. CEO?
Yeah, look, what we are looking to provision for some of that money, but you know, it's not. We won't be adopting a budget until the 27th of June, so we still have some time to take account of those things. But you know, these are the sorts of things that are continuing to impact our ultimately our budget considerations.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney.
Just on another matter, I see just under the specified area rate for Canning Vale, which we all know occurs, this year I've seen that on paragraph on item 27, it says there's a surplus being created of $15,000. Just wondering, that's the ratepayers of Canning Vale, that's their money. What happens to that surplus? Does that surplus go back to the ratepayers of Canning Vale?
Director Driscoll.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. That surplus has been used to calculate that specified area rate, so that's why there is a reduction proposed in 23-24 compared to 22-23.
Councillor Sweeney.
And I don't know whether you know this, but you can get back to me. Has this occurred in any other previous years where there's been a surplus created at the end of the financial year?
Did you want to take that on notice? Are you able to answer that, Director?
I will need to take that one on notice. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the motion. Inflation over the last 2 years has been, in each year, over 7%. This is in the long-term financial plan of 4.65%. Anything under 7% is actually going backwards. So I think we don't have much choice. If this is actually going out for advertising, but if this is what we're doing, we can't. It's too early to say. But if this is what we're doing, it would be a fairly conservative rise, in the sense that I've heard that things like asphalt are going up 30 to 40%, insurance going up at least 10%. I heard something about Western Power tonight. So we are in a very serious price shock economy. And I don't think the shocks have fully come through the system. So I support this, and I don't have anything else at the moment to say.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak against the motion. The rate in the dollar value, especially for the residential one, an increase of 4.65% brings in an extra $1.96 million to the city. Given that our city's budget is well over $100 million, finding a saving of $1.96 million is not a difficult job at all. Given that we got a very smart board, directors and CEO doing the top job, it's not a big amount to find that money at all. So I would request the councillors that if we can't look at it from this point of view, we got a $125+ million OPEX. In total last year, including the CAPEX, we were talking about $170 million of spending. And we can't even find $2 million to cut our spending on. That's what we are getting into. If we stop the rates increase, that's the only figure we need to find. And the information I'm trying to request is basically give us the best projects. So we don't choose the project straight away. CEO in the best position, if there is anyone who can find those projects who are not needed the most at this time, maybe in a year's time, maybe in 2 years' time. And the council can then look into those projects and make a decision whether we really need to delay those projects or they are really needed. If they're really needed, so be it. Then we have to increase rates. But we should have that information to look at it. I would ask councillors, have you looked at each and every project which city is going to do in this financial year? Are you fully comfortable that's not a waste of money? And there is absolutely not a single dollar getting wasted in the next financial year's budget. If you are fully happy with that, then yes, we should increase rates. But if you feel like, okay, there is some money we could save, then we should work hard to find that money. And we should ask our CEO and staff to assist us find that money. And that's all I'm proposing, and that's the reason why I will not support this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before I close? Thank you. I don't propose to speak in rebuttal. I hope for your support for this recommendation. So simply we can put it out to public advertising and seek submissions from our residents on the proposal. But look, I will say just the Deputy Mayor eloquently, as he always does, mentioned cost of living increases, but also inflation and the issues that we have as a council here. Everything that we do has increased in price. Everything is increasing. We can't be the only authority, the only business in the whole of Western Australia that somehow takes a financial loss. We must be able to provide a response to things that contingencies like the proposed 43.8% increase to the street lighting tariff, and the increase compared to in rates is an extraordinarily small amount on an annual basis. The general rate is going up on the proposal, very small amount compared to many other rises. And I think, council should be looking at not rolling up projects, but actually increasing what we do to show people where the money is actually being invested. And, we can deliver a zero rate increase every year. We just simply stop doing everything. Or we pull back on important projects that deliver a benefit to our community. I think people that live in this city, people like myself, and well, all of us here, know what a beautiful city it is, how well our parks and gardens are generally kept, the quality of our roads, the multi-million-dollar investment that we're proposing into playgrounds, our urban forest strategy, so many worthy projects. I often think it's simply the fact that we don't talk often enough about where the additional spend will actually be put. So I'm very comfortable with going to the public and asking for their feedback on there. We have 100,000 residents, 35,000 homes. I'll be interested to see the feedback that we receive, but the 4.65% proposed rate in the dollar is a very small increase considering the financial pressure being placed on the local government sector right across the board. Everything we do has become increasingly more expensive. And only 2 years ago, we were forced by the state government to freeze our rates during COVID, probably rightfully, but we did, and we're still paying for that. So I thank Councillor Singh for his comments, but I don't support what he is actually saying. We will put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
Motion CC00923 has been carried with 10 in favour, with Councillor Singh voting against the motion.
Thank you, councillors. We will move on then. The matter's been carried to CC010 of 23, monthly financial report for April 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 38 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Bain, thank you very much. Seconder, please. Councillor Parkinson, thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Motion CC 010-23 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is CD 007 of 23. The next item was the adjourned Jandakot link. We've already brought that forward and dealt with it. CD 007, the title of the report is Initiation of Scheme Amendment number 12 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, increasing the density of various lots bound by Lacey Street, Campbell Street, Crawford Street and Redcliffe Street from R20 to R30. The responsible officer being Director Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development. The recommendation is on page 113 of tonight's agenda and is also on screen. Deputy Mayor, I understand you've got an alternate motion. I'm just trying to understand why this hasn't been dealt with as an amendment.
No, I don't, Mr Mayor.
Sorry?
I don't have a alternate motion.
Who did I say? Sorry, Councillor Jacobs. Just your microphone.
I don't have a foreshadowed motion. I'd just like to second first the motion, as in move the motion.
Sorry, just say that again.
I'd like to move the motion.
Your alternate motion?
No, I'd like to move the motion CD 00723.
Thank you. You are the mover then, Councillor Jacobs. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconder for that? I'll second it from the chair. Councillor Jacobs.
I'd just like to propose a minor amendment to going from initiation from R20 to 25, opposed to R20 to R30.
Hang on. So you're proposing to change it from the
R20
author's
up to
recommendation is
R25.
R20 to R30. You're proposing R25. I'm not certain if that's an amendment because it changes the intent. Can I ask Director Bride? Director Bride, can I ask you for a comment in relation to the proposal?
Yeah,
what are the implications of that?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, it's quite a significant impact. R30 has an average lot size of around of 300 square metres. R25 is 350 square metres. So when you look at potential impact on lot yields for the landowners in that precinct, it does involve a reduction in lot yield on each individual lot. So across the whole street block, it's quite a significant impact. And it may affect the viability of any future development as well.
It affects the intent of the motion, that aspect of it. Would you like to put it as a foreshadowed motion? I mean, we now know that you'd like to actually propose
No, let's just get on with it.
R25.
Let's just go on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jacobs, did you want to speak to the substantive motion then?
Yeah, okay. So the area is a fairly dynamic area of East Cannington. I know that this is going to be stepped up over 2 years. R30 does make it similar to what's on the north, but a little bit different to what's on the south, being Gosnells is R25, and to the, is it the east, would be R20. I know that what gives me comfort is the new R codes are coming up, which will be significantly different from the ones now and allow a lot more space between buildings. I get the point that I'm not going to split the dummy over a five, R coding 5. And so I think there is significant potential, redevelopment potential in there, which will bring significant income to the city on essentially our southern boundary there, because Lacey Street, after you go to Lacey Street, it's Gosnells. That's all, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. I support the recommendation that has come through from the administration. It brings some consistency to the planning scheme in relation to upcoding those properties to R30 and provides some benefit to the area, I think, in the manner in which it will actually develop over time. And of course, it doesn't mean that all those houses will immediately be bulldozed, because they certainly won't. In fact, we'll probably see very little change in the short to medium term, but it provides some flexibility, and again, it just allows us to actually advertise the scheme amendment for public consultation. So that's all this is. We're actually looking to advertise it. We'll see what falls out of that, but I support it. Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against it before we put it to the vote? Thanks, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CD 00723 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next matter is in relation to High Road and Augusta Street in Willerton. It's EN 007 of 23. The responsible officer being Mr Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 133 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? A mover, Deputy Mayor, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Spencer Teo. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll support the officer recommendation. This intersection has long been problematic, as the report outlines. There's been a number of crashes and serious crashes in that intersection in a relevantly short period of time, but you'll find that being a consistent issue for many years. I mean, even the Willerton Progress Association, I don't think exists anymore, but they once put a motion to council asking for this intersection to be fixed. There's always going to be, as you'll see in the consultation, stakeholders that are disappointed because there is no easy fix. There are relevant resolutions that just aren't possible, traffic lights, roundabouts, so forth on the intersection. So staff have looked at possible ways that can try to mitigate the issues. Turning right onto the eastern side of Augusta Street into those properties was raised as a reason why we shouldn't do it, but that's actually one of the major issues at that intersection. There's so much happening. I personally, forever, have exited Bunnings and gone down Roxby Lane anyway, because it's far easier to do that, and then use Yampie Way to get onto High Road. The reality is that we need to do something to mitigate the issues, and I support what's been put forward by staff and funded through the Australian Government and State Government, and I think Council should support it to try to get better road safety outcomes.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I too support the officer's recommendation. As the Deputy Mayor explained, this has been a troubled intersection for a very long time. I just hope and pray it doesn't turn into another Webb Street, otherwise I'll be moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's hope you're not moving. Can we put anyone want to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thanks, councillors. Let's put this matter to the vote.
Motion EN 00723 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you, council. We move to EN 008 of 23. The report title is Tender 19/2022 Mowing of City Verges. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 147 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Jacobs, a seconder. Councillor Amanda Spencer Teo. Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah, I support this, and I hope that the tenders can continue the good work the city does with mowing of city verges and making them look tidy and not neglecting those the offcuts. I'm looking forward to some quality work by these two companies to keep our city looking spick and span for our residents. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Spick and span is important. Thank you, councillor. Councillor Spencer Teo.
I have nothing to add other than I support the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion EN008 has been carried unanimously with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move on to what I believe is might be our final matter for tonight. It's 7.5. Is that right? 7.5? Can't be 7.5, but anyway. It is? We've gone back to it? Okay. The officer responsible is Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Customer and Community. The item is CO 003 of 23, the title of the report being Review of Customer and Community Policies. The recommendation, Council, is on page 156 of tonight's agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Spencer Teo, a seconder, please. I'll move it. Oh, sorry, I'll second it from the chair then. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just got you, Dr McQuaid. I accept the officer's recommendation and have no issues with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have nothing further to add other than I support the recommendation. Anyone wish to speak against? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the item to the vote.
Motion CO 00323 has been carried unanimously, all 11 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. At item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given, there are none. Urgent business at item 15, there is none. Confidential matters at item 16, similarly, there are none. And closure at item 17. Governance, thanks for your support this evening. Staff, thank you. Councillors, thanks for your attendance. I now declare the meeting closed. The time is 8:26 p.m. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance.